So we've come down to King's Cross for what is, I think, my third of these. Hopefully you can hear us above the drills, the jazz, and the general hubbub of King's Cross. So that I'm not sat here just mumbling into the camera, really. This is Joss. Joss probably approached me maybe the start of the year, end of last year. And told me about his experiences, what he's been through. And we just had a chat over a pint, and I thought it would then be a good idea to sit down and share some of Joss's experiences, like all the other guys are doing for me. So here's Joss.
Right.
So what brought you to meeting me in a pub?
You came into the shop, I seem to remember, and you bought something, and then I put two and two together, and I remembered you were the guy that were doing mental health posts that I'd read about. And I thought, there's another person I could talk to about it. We've got mutual friends who have also had mental health problems who you've talked to. And I just thought, I'll throw my hat into the ring. Not knowing that obviously it would come to us listening to smooth jazz and drills.
It's really cool that you've taken the time and you're happy to talk about some of your experiences, which can't be an easy thing to do. And I think when I first started doing it, then I spoke to Paul Albert, Leon.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a good thing. Hopefully it's reaching more people.
Even if it reaches one person, I think it's totally worthwhile. I think if one person hears something that chimes with them, you've done a job that's probably far beyond what anyone else could have done. I mean, it's totally worth it, I think.
So tell me a little bit more about what you struggle with, how you cope.
Yeah.
Where you're at now, really.
Where I'm at now? Well, it's always a fluid situation, as you well know. But
I like the term roller coaster.
Roller coaster
I don't like
good.
it. Right?
Yeah, fucking hate roller coasters. I think we started our conversation in the pub, and I asked you if there was one thing that happened to you, and we talked about suicide, and we talked about, was there one catastrophic life event that made you have to reappraise everything?
Yeah.
And I think for a long time I always thought I was quite open up until about 2 years ago. Now 2 years ago, about mid-August, so we're coming up to 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I was working. I never used to work in retail or Rafa. I used to work in the West End Theatre, and it was great. But eventually, I kind of burnt out for a number of different reasons. And one evening between shows, after a matinee, I found myself in the gym where I used to go, curled up in a ball next to a swimming pool, sobbing my eyes out for not one reason, but it was like a very primitive child-like howl of I don't know, confusion, loss. I didn't know where I was. I felt suicidal that whole summer. And from that moment on, I got taken home by a friend who I'd managed to phone. I recommend, well, I don't recommend having what you would refer to as a breakdown in a gym, because you have to get dressed and gather yourself slightly. But that's the start of what has been a very kind of long process of self-audit and why things came to a head so catastrophically on that afternoon.
It's 2 years ago.
It's about 2 years ago, yeah. It was in August 2018. So I went home, and there was things to do with work. It was a very toxic work environment that I was in, and there were a few things I'll get onto that later on. But kind of luckily, I had to have surgery after this, about 4 days after this, on my shoulder for some minor problem. But I knew I had time off work, and so had the surgery and basically adjusted to a new normal where I was not only medicated for the shoulder operation, but I was prescribed antidepressants like a few days before. I was put onto a CBT course, like a 12 weeks CBT course, a talking therapy. So I had a lot of time while I was kind of not able to go to work to have a really good think about why things had come to a head so badly. Because previous to that, for about 2 years, I wasn't quite right, and suicidal thoughts had started to creep in, and I wasn't functioning properly. Looking back, I was probably not very nice to live with. Like going back to that roller coaster, just like massively up and down. In that period where I was after recovering from my shoulder thing, I basically left work because I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back there. I decided that I think if I carried on there, God knows what would have happened. But I set a boundary for myself, which I'm not very good at, and I kind of put my foot down and said I'm not going back there. And so I had about 6 months of not working, but in that 6 months, like I said, I did a huge self-audit about how it got to that point.
Yeah.
And I did a deep dive basically into how I was going to deal with things in the future and how I was going to draw these boundaries for myself where I wasn't going to get so invested.
Is this something that you, because you were getting...
I'd been to the doctor a few times in the previous year to try and articulate that I wasn't feeling very good. And so when I went back after this episode in the gym where I was crying and kind of curled up into a ball, and I went to the doctor after that and I said, I really need help on a mental health level, basically. But then I figured out, or tried to figure out, why I acted like that, and I'm in a lot clearer place as to why that happened now. So I've reached some kind of understanding about what happened and the reasons why it happened.
So prior, were you not very self-aware, or just...
No, I was overly self-aware, and it was a massive self-esteem issue. And I hadn't equipped myself, or I wasn't equipped with the means to be able to either set my own boundaries or to stop being so self-critical, and to be able to relax. I still don't know what that means, but relax. Yeah, no, I don't know what that means. I'm not at ease with kind of utter tranquility, because there's something's coming that ain't going to be great, and I need to be prepared for it. But that I've learned that there are reasons why I think like that. I grew up around addiction, right? And so when I see other people, I used to be quite envious of other people being able just to be like lost on their phone,
Right.
because they're totally in the moment, and or they're by the pool and they're just chilling out.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. So like, I know why that is. It's because when I used to walk into a room when I was a kid, I had to assess the whole situation and act accordingly, rather than just walk into a room. Huge. I always knew that my childhood was a little bit dodge, but I didn't quite know how affecting it was. And up until 2 years ago, it all kind of came to a head. I think that's how it manifested itself. And I think when I became a father, everything kind of changed, and I was looking up to my parents, and then looking down at my daughter, and looking back at my own experiences, and I realised that there's huge chunks of my childhood that I just don't remember. So I've been trying to really dive into why I don't remember, and trying to eke out what I can from what the memories that I do have.
Yeah.
Why are they still there, and not other stuff? So you have to forgive yourself. That's how you kind of will go easy on yourself.
And I guess you can use that now as the way I am with my kids. I didn't have a childhood like yours.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware that, you know, I want my kids to look back at their childhoods and me, and, you know, I talked quite openly with my daughter about what I did. And
You told me about that. I think that's amazing.
without doubt, the hardest thing I've ever
Yeah, of
done.
course.
But it brought us closer together.
Of course.
And since, I'm now even more aware of how I am with her.
Or it's like I don't go there. I don't ride my bike to escape.
No, so
I don't
particularly like
it's
that,
not
so
where I
don't
feel
use
free and, you know, wonderful.
Zen.
Yeah, Zen. Zen is the last thing I feel.
Yeah.
I have terrible times on the bike. I think about stuff that I hate thinking about on the bike.
Yeah, I'm the same. I get not so bad now, but, you know, when I was at my worst, I was alone in a foreign country,
Yeah.
putting on a show, being a guide, pretending everything was cool,
Yeah.
and then just getting home and crying.
Yeah.
And my first attempt was when I was on the bike.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look back and think the amount of rides I went on over years and years and years and years that I didn't enjoy because I was thinking. And I wasn't able to have this kind of... I was very jealous when I heard people talking about how zen they were, or how the bike was an escape. I was like, how the fuck do people do that? Because I can't.
Yeah.
And my head's just going at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And whether I was riding in a group or solo, I was my own worst enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. Same.
And so going out on the bike when it's not good. Whereas now, I'm much, much better at...
Yeah. I think, when I was a kid, I used to go out on my bike. I used to go out on my racing bike when I was like 11, 12, to get out of my house.
Yeah.
And I'd do it for like 2 hours. So it was a necessity. I had to go and get out there. I wanted to get out.
Similar, it's an escape, but, you know, not for the
It's
obvious
literally,
reason.
for a different, literally getting out of that place.
Yeah.
And I'd have 3 hours. I'd cycle up to Devil's Dyke thinking I was Miguel Indurain. I've stopped on the top of Swains Lane and phoned Samaritans because I was feeling so shitty.
Right.
And I was like, I'm out here, it's dark, I'm just beating myself up on the bike. And this lovely old lady who's, you know, I talked to her about all, you know, I just got everything off my chest. It was less than a year ago.